All right. Hello, blah, blah, blah. I totally messed that up. Let's start over. Hello, heavy metal maniacs. It's the Meister from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. Absolutely thrilled today. I've got a very special guest with me joining me. I'm very excited to be chatting with the one and only Mr. Paul Britton, of course, of the new wave of British heavy metal band, the mighty Scarab, as well as bands such as Trappazat, his solo project, the Battle of Britton, formerly of Jameson Raid and Solstice, and among others. Paul, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, it's all right. A bit cold here in on the south coast of England, but it's all good.
A little cold. Yeah, it's cold here. It snowed last night, all night. So we've got a lot of snow. So it's cold
I
here in
bet.
Utah.
I
It's a
bet.
little
I
chilly.
don't think we've quite got it as cold as you, but it's been one of the coldest days here for a month or so.
Oh wow.
So, and we're in the middle of a house renovation, so we haven't got heating all the time, but
Oh no.
it's all good. Not moaning.
At least spring is around the corner, not too far off.
Yeah, but I can't wait to be honest with you. We can get the garden done then.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, I have lots of questions. There's so much. Yeah. Thanks again for joining me. I'm really excited to chat with you. Scarab was one of those bands that I remember as a kid. I got into the new wave of British heavy metal as a youngster, and and here in the States in the '80s, early '80s, it was hard to get a hold of a lot of it. And I remember reading about Scarab in magazines and really wanting to try, and I'd hear like a track here or there from people that, the tape trades. But it took years and years for me to actually get a copy, and fortunately, I've got a copy right here of this phenomenal album, which is everything, every studio track you guys ever recorded. And that was released, well, probably what, about 10 years ago, I think, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the CD is every studio track with a couple of live tracks on there from various venues around the Midlands at the time.
Nice.
But it's every track we recorded up until about 94, 85.
Okay.
So that initial period of Scarab. We did a lot of recording, none of it particularly successful because we were a bunch of young lads. We just wanted to play, play live. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to work out where all the recordings. I mean, people look at the list of recordings now, and they are what they are, as a bunch of young kids, honest,
Yeah.
making the noise they wanted to make. But we'd have had no chance securing a decent deal with those quality back in the day, especially as the competition in Birmingham was so tough. There were
Yeah.
a lot of great bands.
Yeah. A lot of, yeah. But I think it's brilliant. But and yeah, as you said, there are a lot of great bands. I always found it odd, especially when you look at what came next, with the thrash metal scene, and then beyond that with grunge. It's interesting that there weren't more bands of that era, of the new wave of British heavy metal era, that made it. I mean, because you really only have three bands that gained commercial success.
Yeah,
Saxon, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, obviously, and there were other bands that did okay, did well, like Angel
yeah,
Witch and Tigers of Pantang and
yeah,
Diamond Head, but when you look at like, the thrash metal scene and the grunge scene and how many bands were signed, it was like those record companies signed anybody and everybody that they could get a hold of. Whereas it seemed like for some weird reason with new wave of British heavy metal, a lot of bands never got signed or, didn't they'd have like a hit or a little bit of radio play and then disappear. Which I thought was
yeah. I'm
odd.
not I'm not 100% sure why that was the case, but I totally agree
Yeah.
with what you just said. Um, I think I think a lot of it was to do with the new wave of British heavy metal scene came out of a punk era in the
Mm.
UK,
Right.
but it also came out of a bit of a pompous rock era where the big bands and the massive tours, the Led Zeppelins, the Sabbaths. Um, And so I always thought that those two things, the rock, the 70s, early 70s rock, I mean, I wouldn't have even called it heavy metal then. I mean, you know, Sabbath was metal, of course, but it wasn't core metal. And
Yeah.
really, until Priest came along, that was that they invented the genre as far as I was concerned.
Mm.
And I think that was all going on while the punk was going on. And of course, the punk guys were playing fast. To me, punk was just great rock, you know.
Right.
It wasn't complicated, it wasn't pretentious, it wasn't anything else other than, you know, mates having a bit of a laugh, to be honest.
Mm.
There was some serious guys in there, of course. You're led to believe that the Pistols couldn't play and the Damned couldn't play, but they could, and they knew what they were doing in the end. Maybe not at first,
Right.
but they made some bloody good records, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I think with all the, especially the bands from like Newcastle, the north of England, the northeast of England, there was all like loads of rock bands up there. I don't think the punk did very well up there ever,
Mm.
but there was always a rock scene and two labels, Ebony Records and Neat Records, sort of latched onto that new wave of British heavy metal thing that was going on before anybody called it the new wave of British heavy metal, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think the phrase was coined until 79 via a Sounds, a magazine that we had, a
Um,
paper we had in the UK. I think Jeff Barton, later of Kerrang, Jeff Barton called it the new wave, but the invasion of the new wave of British heavy metal, something like that, and it stuck. I'm
yeah.
not too sure it was a great, a great tag. But anything that was any rock band that came along after that, up to about 84, 85, including ourselves, um, if you're talking 79 to 85, where people say that was the era for the new wave of British heavy metal, I was been one, two, three, four, five bands. I was in actual Scarab was just one of five bands I was in. Started off in 79 in a band called Weather King, moved on to a band called, no, sorry, Heretic. Then we went on to a band called Weather King. Then we left Weather King. I formed the very first, what was going to be Scarab, but we called it Forge,
Oh, yeah.
because Dave Parrish joined the band. Then he left, and I formed the first Scarab. So we had quite a few bands leading up to what I consider my new wave of British heavy metal band.
Interesting.
Um, I mean, we've still got tapes of all the early bands that I
Oh,
was
wow.
in, at various places. Still got the master tapes for the Weather King stuff.
Oh,
Weather
wow.
King was my first serious band, really.
Will
Uh,
would that would those tapes ever see the light of day in a public
we
form?
I tried to put them out, but
Oh, wow.
and I got a deal on it. About 10 years ago, I pretty much dug up every master tape I could get my hands on, the Scarab stuff, the Trappazat stuff, the Weather King stuff, even the Valley Forge stuff, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and sort of got a deal on all of it, on all of them. But it was very difficult to get the other guys in the bands that were then as excited about it, you know, especially the Weather King guys. Ironically, they're still playing now. They call themselves Punch and Judas now.
Oh, wow.
Two of them, great guys, love them to death. One of them's my best friend, you know, one of them. And they still play the old Weather King songs,
Nice.
or at least two or three of them. But yeah, it's difficult to. I'm not going to say it's difficult to get other people excited, especially at our age, you know. I mean, I just would have loved to have got everything out that I've ever done and just get it released and let everybody hear it, you know. Um, but you know, sometimes it doesn't work out. Same
Right.
as with the Trappazat, you know, the Trappazat stuff. Well, we found the Trappazat master tapes in the old manager's garage.
Wow.
I'd left the band, and they got another singer in and re-recorded all my vocals.
Really? Oh,
Yep. So that Trappazat album had gone, been discarded. The great thing about it was though that they had the foresight before I went to run a mix off with me singing.
nice. I've got a yeah, got a copy of this album,
Yeah,
right? The yeah, the
I got it ready this time.
oh, nice. Fantastic album.
No,
This is so good.
yeah, I mean I'll just very very quickly tell you the story about that. I'd moved to Telford, and I'd just come out of owning and running a jewellery business. I'd
Hmm.
had 3 or 4 years after Scarab. It wasn't so much after Scarab, but it was after my mother died, and I started looking for something else. And I left the area where I'd been living all my life, Sutton Coldfield, and moved to a place called Shropshire, which is 50 miles away, we'll say. And I started a jewellery business. And I did that for 2 or 3 years and did okay for a while, it was all right. And then, of course, I started to get the bug again and just walked into a rehearsal studio in a place called Telford in the Midlands and listened to. Have you ever heard of a band called? You must have heard of a band called Cancer,
Oh yeah, great.
death metal. Yep. Well, I walked in and Cancer were playing, um, rehearsing there.
Oh wow.
And it was a bit loud and a bit over the top for me at the time, because of course it was then. This would have been 80 late autumn 88, I'm going to say,
Okay.
so around October 88. So they were rehearsing Cancer, and they had that producer with them in the room. I can't remember his name. Owned a studio, did all the production on all the early death metal albums,
Okay.
by the by. But next door there was a sensible band, what I thought was a sensible band playing. But I remember hearing the guitar player, and so going up and listening, oh, this sounds bloody good. And it was like a sort of lighter version of Iron Maiden. It was sort of rock as opposed hard rock as opposed to. I thought it was quite UFO-y,
Hmm.
but a bit sort of lighter. Anyway, I said to the bloke that was running the place, "Who's that?" And he said, they're a band. I can't remember what they called themselves at the time. It might have even been Trappazat. I can't remember. Um, but they were looking for a singer. They had a singer, but his sort of commitment to it all was waning a bit. And he was an amazing singer, better than I could ever dream of being. His name's Kerry Taylor, and he sings for a band called Redline now,
Hmm. Okay.
who are brilliant, absolutely brilliant in the UK. Anyway, so I said, oh, I wouldn't mind having a jam with them. So I had a jam with them and got on okay with Brian, the guitarist, and the drummer, Spen. The other two guys were a little bit different to anything people I'd worked with. They were a bit sort of, I don't want to use the word straight, but a bit sort of, you know, maybe not as committed as, But
Hmm.
I auditioned and they said, "Do you want to join?" I said, "Yeah," and we did. We did a couple of shows just to break me in, I suppose. But half their set I thought was um, sort of maidenish, as you've heard on the album.
Yeah.
And the other half was sort of like rock, like sort of UFO, or even there was even tracks that they did which was sort of like Bad Company and Free, and
Hmm.
a bit too. It was almost two different sets. So I just said I'll be interested in joining if we just do the sort of heavy metal thing. Yeah, so they said, yeah, well, we're good with that. They hadn't got a full set, so I wrote 2 or 3 songs. Well, I wrote a couple more, but they didn't make it to the album. But the 3 songs that are on the album that I wrote, DOA, Firstborn, I'd got those songs written before I joined them. They were sort of scarab songs that never got finished.
Hmm.
And just rewrote lyrics for them. But I just said to him one day, I said, well, why don't we just go and record an album? No, how are we going to afford that? And within a month, we was in the studio recording an album. It's like I've always said, if you want it bad enough, there's always a way,
Yeah.
you know. And we did it. We went in recording now with the idea of producing the whole thing, getting it all mastered, getting it all ready, and just sending it out to all the labels and saying, "Help yourself." I mean, even in early '89 when it was released, when we recorded it, even Maiden was struggling then.
Mm.
uh, you know, because of the grunge thing, 89, 90. Metal was dying and grunge was coming in, and the scraps of thrash metal was still going and hair metal was still going, but it was petering off a bit.
All right.
So I didn't expect much. And to be honest with you, I wasn't getting on with two of the guys in the band. So, and I was going through the divorce marriage from hell at the time.
Oh no.
Um, so I bowed out and left them to, and they got the old singer back in, and that's why this was released 20 years later.
Wow.
You know, because it was me singing, and my songs, really, a couple of them, all the arrangements are mine. I did redone most of the arrangements, and all the lyrics I had to change. I think maybe Kerry, the singer that took over, will say they were his lyrics in the first place, but I changed quite a lot of them because of my speech impediment, because I've got a you know, wackety wowdy rebel speech impediment, so I have to change suit lyrics just to change that, you know. So I mean, it is what it is. I'm not ashamed of it or anything, but just lessen it as much as I can, and I've done it all my life.
Interesting.
So yeah, so that's how the Trappazat thing happened, and then of course 20 years later, um, when somebody had contacted me about releasing all the Scarab stuff, and we got in touch with buried a label called Buried in Time and Dust. Have you ever heard of that label?
Sounds
They
familiar.
were interested, and High Roller were interested.
Mm.
And to be honest with you, I went with High Roller in the end because uh, they offered the best sort of package. It looked like it was going to be. So I gave them the Trappazat album as well, but the package wasn't as good as the Scarab package. I thought they were going to do the full gatefold, and
Oh.
but no. I even wrote like a little booklet for it, but that didn't get included. So, but the Scarab package was brilliant with the booklet and the
Oh yeah, that's great.
gatefold and the single. You know that uh, there's this single. Now this was this was because these two tracks wouldn't fit on the vinyl.
Oh.
They just wouldn't fit on. So I said, well, these two tracks were going to be released as a single back in 1980, back in 1983.
Oh
This
well.
was the first single that was going to go out pre Poltergeist, and this was the original lineup.
Oh wow, cool. Oh,
So
that's
no
great.
Dave Parrish. So these are all the original. Now uh, Steve Riley, who went on to be on the Poltergeist single, Gary Crow, the bass player, brilliant bass player. He was like Geezer Butler's, that type of playing. Brilliant lad, lovely bloke. And Andy Lewis at the end there, he
Okay.
got he got more of a Gillan type voice. I
Mm.
always thought, with a little bit of Led Zeppelin-y type, uh, you know, melody, that sort of thing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I thought he was a lovely lad. I mean, we were great looking. We went for the looks and everything when I formed that. I just wanted good looking guys who could play, get him infused, you know what I mean? And we'll see how far we can get it. And we did some great shows, I have to say. But it was getting softer and softer and softer. And if you listen to the first two tracks on the anthology,
Mm.
on Rolling Like Thunder,
Yeah.
um, it's Don't Stare, I think,
Yeah.
and All Night Long.
All night long. Yeah.
Well, those are the only two, and these are the only four that this band was on. After that, it was the metal band, really, what I'd call the metal band. This was more rock.
Mm.
Those are definitely, those two on that, the CD are definitely rock. These are a bit heavier, and I think that was the problem. I enjoyed doing this a bit more. I was desperate to get another guitar because I'm a massive Priest, massive Maiden fan. Definitely desperate to get the classic five lineup, two guitars, bass, vocals. And we could never get a singer. I mean, we tried a couple out, we had a great singer as well, sounded like Ozzy, he was brilliant. And I thought, that's it, we've got the lineup now. But he lasted like one show. We got into
Oh,
trouble at a big gig, and it didn't happen. A big fight broke out, and me and Dave got arrested. It's all pretty much documented. We got arrested for inciting a riot. I was arrested for inciting a riot.
inciting a riot. Wow.
But I'm not going to go on about it. But go on about that. But it was and the lad ran off. This singer ran away. Well, so we thought, well, he ain't going to be much good to us if he hasn't got that. So yeah, we always tried to get the classic lineup, which was why we asked Blaze, Blaze Bailey,
Oh,
around 85, early 85. We had a great lineup. Me and Dave, Nigel Shaw, the bass player, who's on the Poltergeist single on pretty much every track on that album after those two.
mm.
Great looking bass player. I mean, and could play, but great looking. Sounds like I went after good looking guys all the time, but I mean, it's no good having guys that don't look the part.
Right. Right.
I mean, I wanted people who would do daft stuff. I don't mean stupid things, but would get involved in creating an image around the band. We had a road crew that was as much, for me, they was as much part of the band as the band. And I
Mm.
mean, the one guy, Carl, who's my roadie all my life, really, he was as much a part of the band, Scarab,
Cool.
as the band was. And he was as known for being Scarab's roadie. Wild man, absolute wild man. Still about now, lovely bloke. But yeah, we sat down, and I did ask the two guys from Wolfsbane, the two guitarist and bass player, if Blaze would be interested in joining us, and they were absolutely horrified. And I
Mm.
suppose I can understand why they hadn't been together long. Dave had seen Wolfsbane play at a place called the Arts Centre in the outskirts of Staffordshire. Just a small gig, not many people there, but he rang me up the next day, Dave, and he said, "Cindy's a brilliant singer.
Mm.
Can't sing great, but he's got such a stage presence." Anyway, went to see him again, and we actually booked him to come and play with us on a couple of gigs.
Oh,
So
cool.
they opened up for us a couple of times. And I was convinced then. I thought, oh, we've got to get this guy involved. And I cornered him down in the bar at the Arts Centre one day and just said, "What, do you want to come on board?" And he was sort of taken aback at first, and he sort of went, "What, join Scarab?" And I went, "Yeah, yeah, come on board. You know the band, you know you can do it." And he went, and just like this, he went, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm
Wow.
staying with Wolfsbane. We're going places." So even from there, and he knew what he wanted and knew what he was doing. And he loved Scarab. He absolutely adored the band. Uh, he, 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 he did an interview with Candy Rock magazine about 2, 3 months ago, and it was just all about us. There's pictures of us, tiny little picture of Blaze talking, and pictures of us playing live, and he describes what we were like. And
Huh.
he was a massive fan, but he knew where he was going. And Wolfsbane, it's a shame about Wolfsbane because
Yeah.
they were a great band. Like I've said many times to many people, Jace Edwards, the guitarist, he was the UK's. There was him. There's three guys: Brian Meacham from Trappazat, um, JC Ace, Jace Edwards and a guy called Steve Harris, no relation, from a band called Shy. Don't know whether you ever heard of Shy.
I don't think so.
They get overlooked, but they were a new wave of British heavy metal band. They signed to RCA,
Okay.
um, released 4 or 5 albums. The singer, Tony Mills, went on to sing with ah, Swedish Norwegian band, huge band. I can't remember. But they're both dead. He's dead now. So, but look up Shy
Okay.
and then look up the guitarist, Steve Harris. He's dead. He died 5 years ago from a brain tumor.
Oh man.
Uh, but another brilliant guitarist. I couldn't even dream about being this good, these three guys, you know. I mean, in fact, it was probably Jace that made me give up being in a band. I started managing bands
Oh
around
wow.
85, end of 85, 86. And I thought, we're never going to compete with these guys. It's like the difference was for me, the way I was looking at it. You know, like you must get American football players back in the day. Certainly with soccer players, as you call it, football players in the UK, back in the 60s, 70s, they'd all go out on the piers and birds, and then they'd turn up for training with a fag in their mouth.
All right.
Nowadays, they're all training, they're all fit, they're stronger. It's total dedication. Well, that's what it was like for some of the bands in the
Mm.
80s that I was seeing coming through. They were just so much better. They were totally devoted. I mean, some of them liked to drink, but they were just totally, we're going to do this. And Wolfsbane was one of those bands. And
Mm.
they became the darlings of Kerrang in the end. They
Yeah.
were in every Kerrang every week. It was just bombarded with Wolfsbane. And then, of course, they got signed to Def Jam.
That's odd.
Not a great, yeah, it wasn't a great mix really, but the album was okay. It's drum machines, not real drums. But it was what it was. It got them out there. But ultimately, of course, he went on to join Maiden when Dickinson left, which
Yeah.
was probably, I mean, I'd have done it,
Yeah. How do you say no to that?
everybody would have done it. You can't say nah, you
Yeah.
know. Incidentally, I don't know whether you know, but you've heard of a band called Cloven Hoof.
Oh, I love Cloven.
Well, Russ, the singer, who's just recently died,
Oh yeah.
Russ North, he was number two. He
That's
was
right.
it was Blaze Bailey and Russ North in the end.
Oh wow.
Yeah, who was going to join Maiden. The idea was they keep it sort of Bruce orientated with Russ North, or they go in a different direction with Blaze, and they went with Blaze.
Yeah.
Um,
Wild. I did not know
and
that.
so obviously Russ North didn't get the gig, but
Oh.
he's a lovely bloke. Russ North was.
Yeah, I've
I
heard,
really liked Russ.
I obviously I didn't know him, but I have, there are musicians that I know, in the
Yeah,
scene that knew him and said he was just a lovely guy.
he was a lovely bloke. So sad. Too. He was a drinker.
Hmm.
And he obviously had his own demons, and I think we don't know what the results of his why he died yet.
Hmm.
But you can bet your life it was something to do with alcohol. He was a
Yeah.
big drinker.
Yeah.
So that's was sort of Scarab up and with a bit of a gap. I managed a band called China White for a year and a bit,
Oh
who we
yeah.
changed the name to Shadowlands to get away from the China White connotations with heroin,
Right.
and we released a single, and I almost got them signed,
Hmm.
um, but it didn't happen. One of the guys from the band went off and formed Martial Law, who went on to do fairly well. They had a chance at one point.
Yeah.
Again, they were hovering around the C B list, you know, and they could have got into the B, and then I think they would have got a leg up. But he was a bit of a prat, the guitarist, to be honest. The
Hmm.
one guitarist, the other guitarist, the one that's still about playing now, he's a lovely bloke. I can't remember his name, But the singer, one of my favourite UK singers of all time, I'm terrible with names, so I've written a load. Like Andy Pike,
Okay.
he sang for Martial Law. Before Martial Law, during the Scarab years, he was in a band called Detroit.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember listening to Detroit's demo in my kitchen where I used to live in Sutton Coldfield and thinking, oh my God, we're going to have to do something with backing vocals because they got the vocals tapped, you know. We thought, and I thought, and that spurred me on, you know, oh, got to get that good, you know.
Nice.
But brilliant singer, Andy Pike. So if you look at Martial Law and their sort of early stuff, especially the first album, really good.
Cool.
They went out on a label called Heavy Metal Records.
Nice.
Um, brilliant singer and a lovely bloke. He's retired now. He's finished. The last band he was with, Vicious Nature, they're still going, but he'd had enough for one
Wow.
reason or another.
Wow. Do you
But that sort of took us up to uh, 1989 when I left Trappazat.
Okay. I'm curious. So, as an American, and as a fan of that new wave of British heavy metal era, it's easy for me here to kind of romanticize about what it was like. Did you have a sense at the time of what you were part of? Was there, I mean, I have this, and I'm sure it's wrong, but I had this sense of like, oh, there were just all these bands and all, everywhere you went, there were clubs with all these new wave of British heavy metal bands everywhere. And it was, and everybody was friends and touring with each other and playing with, what was it? It probably wasn't like that at all, but did you have a sense of what you were part of at that time?
I think we all knew that there was all of a sudden there was more rock metal bands than had been around for a long time. And the ones that started appearing in London and the northeast of England on around 79, 80, 81 um, spurred a lot of other rock bands and even musicians that were sort of dabbling with in punk bands. They sort of changed a little, you know. I mean, I'll give you one great example. Tank.
Oh yeah,
Algie Ward from Tank.
great
I mean,
band.
he was the bass player for The Damned.
That's
And
right.
when the new wave of British heavy metal started coming along, he obviously thought, this is the direction I want to go in, and formed Tank, you know. Um, but no, I've got to say, we never even thought we were part of a movement.
Mm.
But we thought, Scarab, we were the heaviest band in the Midlands at that time. Um, we and the theatrical the bombs and the backdrops and the it just got bigger and bigger, you know. And we were taking more risks than anybody else, and I was so into Venom.
Mm.
Now I'll probably be a little bit honest here and say that maybe the first album didn't grab me. Welcome to Hell didn't really get that until later, but when I heard black metal on the Friday Rock Show, which was a big thing on Fridays, we were all listening in we were listening for our singles to be played, which it was, you know.
Oh, cool.
And on came black metal, and I thought, oh my God, it's one of these moments where you think, oh, I've got to up our game again. So we just got heavier and louder, and we sold our little PA system, and we hired just a huge PA. £20 a week's wages almost in those days.
Right.
But we'd set £20 worth of pyrotechnics off when we walked on stage.
Wow.
If you search YouTube, you'll find a gig with where a three-piece, which was the last version of Scarab, and we had two gigs we wanted to honour, so we went out as a three-piece, and you'll see all the bombs going off. It's just ridiculous when you see it. You couldn't see the bloody band. There's that much smoke, but it's just a bit of fun at the time. Anybody could do it. You just got to really want to do that type of stuff. But I can remember other bands that were getting were as heavy as we were in different areas of the UK. We were the heaviest band in the Midlands
Mm.
by far.
Yeah.
And the cover thing was still going on, half and half, half originals, half covers. We never played covers. We did a version of Love Potion #9 once, and we used to close on if we had more encores and we had songs, we'd do Paranoid, you know.
Oh, wow.
So we did a speeded up version of Paranoid a couple of times. Um, but yeah, I can't say that we knew that we were going to be historically known as a new wave of British. I mean, people have called us all sorts of things from great to crap. You know, I always thought we were D-list, D-list. A-list being the big three, which are Maiden, Saxon, Def Leppard. B, you mentioned the B-list pretty much. Raven, Diamond Head, Tigers of Pantang. They're the B-listers, There's quite a few more. But the C-listers, that was huge, Spartan Warrior, Jameson Raid, a Tyson Dog. I mean,
Mm.
I can, reel them off. I can, like bands like Surface from Birmingham. They
Mm.
were brilliant. They were a groundbreaking band in '84. Recorded a live album as their first album.
Oh, wow.
Never heard of before. It just put it out. It was brilliant. So yeah, there was other bands around us that were going to be known historically as new wave of British heavy metal, but we were more into heavy bands there. We don't want anything to do with the hair metal. We had bands in Birmingham like Steel and Trouble and Briar. We were all great bands. Shy, who I mentioned earlier, they were just hair metal, what we used to call American orientated rock, like radio,
Mm.
70s radio rock. They were more to me, they sounded more like Foreigner and REO Speedwagon, that type of genre.
Yeah.
But they were still in that period. So now they're known as new wave of British heavy metal bands. They just weren't as heavy as us.
Yeah.
But we sort of gravitated to some of the heavier bands, Hell, for example. Hell were just making headways. If you've ever heard of Hell, Satan.
Oh,
I mean,
Satan's great band.
um, from the northeast, bloody amazing.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few up there that were a bit heavier than the hair metal that we were used to being lumped with, because we look great, we look good, which was another thing we changed because we were getting put on the same bills as sort of lighter bands. Band called Shim. I remember turning up to a place called JB's in Dudley, and we were meant to be going on with a band called the Sumo Giants, and they all turned up with a spiky hair, and I thought, oh, no, not again. And I just said to Dave, let's get out of here. I ain't opening for these jokers. And I'm sure they were a great band. I mean, again, never got anywhere like the rest of us, but I was just getting fed up with being lumped with, and we were trying
Yeah.
to move away. So in the end, we got out of Birmingham. We abandoned Birmingham, started playing all the places around the Midlands outside of Birmingham,
Mm.
Tamworth, Staffordshire, Burton-on-Trent, clubs, pubs, colleges, but not the big stereotypical pubs like the Railway and the Barrel Organ that were in the centre of Birmingham that all the wannabe bands wanted to play. I try to move us away from that. Dave, the guitarist in Scarab, Dave Parrish, he just wanted to play live.
Mm.
I think Dave would have signed his life away for anything, just to get a deal
Just to
and
get
to
on stage.
be able to do it full time. But I didn't want to do that. It had to be the right deal, and it had to be. I mean, what was the point if I couldn't? What was the point if I couldn't give my job up? We wouldn't be asking for like much. We didn't want to. We knew we were never going to get a big major record deal. We weren't that good, you know. But but we needed somebody to stump the money up for some real proper studio time, because we was just you put us in a studio, it was ridiculous.
Hmm.
It's like it's like it's like chucking a fish in. I mean, I did like putting wheels on a tomato. We pointless. We didn't know what we were doing. You know, we didn't hear it right. You know, it was just never sounded. You know, so we it was just a waste of money. So we needed somebody to a producer. So that's all I wanted. I just wanted to sign a deal where they give us a producer. Forget the money. I ain't been bothered about that. Just put us in the studio with somebody who gets what we're trying to do and can take us to the next level. Probably didn't get that until, you know, when I started doing it properly in 2009 when I built my own studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so probably didn't get to, you know, but even then that was a bit dodgy. But yeah, it was. But no, I mean, I don't even know when I became aware of the fact that we were being lumped in. You've got
Hmm.
to with the new wave of British heavy metal. I'm sure it was around the mid '90s, maybe. Maybe a little bit. I mean, certainly around the 2000 mark, I
Yeah.
sort of became aware that my name had started appearing on the internet. Does anybody know what had happened to Paul Britton? Blah 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 type thing. Um, and then I started getting messages and through emails and from people that probably some I didn't know, and it sort of made me want to get involved with it all again. And so I sort of did. But I spelt after Trappazat, I've got involved with Brian again out of Trappazat and Spen, the drummer, and we formed a band called Hostile, and we did that for 4 or 5 years. You put us Hostile in on the internet, linked to my name, nothing, nothing. But we played more gigs and more bigger gigs and more places round the UK than I did with Scarab, you
Interesting.
know.
Did
And then in
Hostile record
2004,
anything?
yeah, we did two demos and we did we sold a lot of demos
Cool.
at shows. We did one called did two demos called one called Violence Reigns and the other one was Violence Reigns again. Um, so again, poorly produced, but it was not that type of band at the time. We were trying to get a sort of Pantera vibe going on, which we sort of, you know, achieved to a certain extent with Brian. He's such a brilliant guitar player. And we did that, and then I gave up again around. I'd opened a recording studio by then over in Shropshire, and I was burning the candle at both ends, as they say.
Hmm.
There was a few too many drugs floating around at the time. So it all got a bit too much. And I again walked away from music around 96, 97. Got a sensible job, bought a house in a respectable area, and concentrated on bringing my daughter up. I mean, the irony about it was around 99, I became a single parent.
Hmm.
And it was just me and my daughter for 6 years or so, which was cool, you know,
Yeah.
which was great. Sort of through her late teens, and then around 2004, when Dime got shot on stage, we did a few. Hostile reformed for a few shows in his honor, really,
Oh.
just so we could go on stage and play, walk, and say, "This is for," you know. Really, that was the only reason we put it together.
Oh, wow.
So Brian, who's a massive Dimebag fan, um, so it was just a reason to do that. But we had a great time. Played some quite big shows, a couple of town hall shows in Shropshire, which was, you know, pretty pretty amazing. And nobody'd seen us for 10 years, you know. But it was really good. But we sort of all got little names ourselves, all four of us by then. You know, that everybody had been in their own bands and built a little bit of a. So yeah, that was fun. And then in 2004, when that was over, I sold up and moved to Wales, went back to university. Brian sold up in Telford. He owned a club and a small shop, repair shop, electronic repair shop. He sold it, moved to Crete,
Oh wow.
where he is now. He's still there now. He's been there since 2004, 20 years, blind,
Wow.
long time. I've been out to see him a couple of times. He plays in clubs and bars. It's really hard for me to watch because he's just the greatest guitar player. He's just an unbelievable guitar player, and he's playing crappy cover songs in a bar to 30 holiday makers, you know.
Wow.
And but nobody's moping around going, oh, poor me, poor me. It's never like that.
Yeah.
He's living in paradise, you know what
Yeah.
I
If he's in
mean?
Crete, yeah, it's gonna be pretty
And
nice.
he's got a little studio. He's just released an EP of all his own material,
Oh, good for him.
you know. Can tell he's been listening to Priest's last two albums. Makes me laugh, he does. But he's a brilliant guitar player and he's a lovely lad, a lovely bloke. He's a couple of years younger than me. But he's what I call, refer to as a natural musician. Gets up in the morning, thinks he's got his toast in one hand, his guitar in the other. You know, that's they live for it, you know,
Yeah.
and he just plays constantly. That's what he does. And then he's got this knack of they sort of natural musicians have this knack to adapt to all recording scenarios. So you can give him uh, a bit of software, and he has it mastered within that. You know, I
Right.
have to work my bollocks off to do that. Battle of Britton album, for example, I had to work my nuts off. I mean, brought me to tears many times. I've got a mate who was doing the same thing at the same time, Neil Wilkinson from the band called Spartan Warrior. If you ever
Mm.
get time to chat to him, he's a lovely bloke. Great guitar player. He's on the Battle of Britain album. He's done a
Oh
couple
yeah.
of solos on that. Great bloke. And he was doing the same thing with Spartan Warrior, who's recording them in his own studio.
Mm.
And people don't realise it's hell. You're alone in the studio trying to get everything sounding great. I mean, he had a band around him. I didn't. It was just me, you know, me and the drummer, me and a guy called Shane Spencer, who was with in Hostile and Trappazat.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
did
Great
all the
drummer.
drums,
Yeah.
but it's really difficult. But because you were learning all the bloody programs at the same time, trying to keep it as an analog as possible. I was still using tapes. I was up until about 2011
Oh wow.
before I went to Pro Tools. And me moving from tape to Pro Tools was like, well, I just can't explain it. I mean, I'm a technophobe, really. It was really difficult, but I mean, great fun when it's going well. Same old story. Great fun when it's going well. A trial when it's not, and it's
Yeah.
really hard to get motivated. But I did it in the end, and I tried to keep it sounding real old school production deliberately because I knew it was only going to go out at that instant on vinyl. So I wanted it to keep it sounding like something that I was involved with and not something anybody else would have done.
Yeah.
If I'd have got Brian involved, it would have all been a bit more crunchy and a bit more produced and sounded a lot crisper. I've since started all the remixes for to put it out on CD, and it sounds a lot crisper and you can hear a lot more. But at the time, I just wanted to get it out old school style, you know,
Yeah, and it's brilliant.
and
I
keep.
think, yeah, I think, yeah, Requiem of War Part One, Blood,
Yeah.
brilliant. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. Yeah, maybe we could talk about that a little bit. I think
Okay.
I love the concept, and I'll let you talk about. I'll let you say what it is. I just think it just works. And musically, it's fantastic, and it has what I like about it is it feels like a new wave of British heavy metal album, but it's also very modern to some degree. But it feels like an old, I mean, there's elements of Maiden in there a little bit with some of the guitar work, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's just fantastic. I'll let you talk about what the content of what that album is because I think it's just brilliant.
It all came about from it's just over the years stories that my dad told me about the two world wars. You know,
Mm.
um, my family was quite involved, members of my family in both wars. My grandfather, for example, on my mother's side, was gassed in the trenches in World War One,
Oh, wow.
and spent his life in mental hospitals,
Wow.
all his life. He sort of blagged his way through life up until the Second World War, where he would have been around 40 or so, 40. And then when the Second World War kicked off, he lost the plot completely, and he spent his life in mental hospitals. My grandmother brought my aunt, my uncle, and my mum up single-handedly, really.
Wow.
Well, single-handedly, because I only met my granddad twice,
Mm.
at two Christmases where he'd be allowed out. And I can remember when I was about 6, he was on the floor with me playing Christmas with my toys. I think it might have been what do you call a scale electric, slot car
Oh, yeah, slot car.
track.
Yeah, yeah,
And he was playing with that with me, but he wasn't really playing with me. He was playing with it. Do you know what I mean? He was
yeah.
quite childlike. And I think he died around 69, 70. But he had quite a he was up here with my family. Uh, he was our casualty from the First World War, let's put it that way,
Right.
even though he didn't die in the First World War. But my dad was, he was in Africa, then he went to Egypt. He was part of, um, he was a bugler. He'd get up in the morning, wake everybody up and go back to bed. But he was part of the British Army that was guarding the Suez Canal at one point.
Oh, wow.
Um, uh, so, but Dad had got loads of friends that had been killed, or there's also my mom's brother, my Uncle Albert. I always knew him as Uncle Al. He was a hurricane pilot.
Mm.
Many kills to his name. You see, the album the lyrics on the album, it's not a no 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 we won type thing. It's all to do with the ordinary man going to war. It's not a blood and guts type thing. There's
Yeah,
a story on there about the people being in the First World War coming back and being shot for being cowards or deserted, but in actual fact they were shell shocked,
yeah,
because it nearly happened to my grandfather. He refused to go back to the front line. He was nearly shot for cowardice. And he was spent his life in mental homes because of that.
yeah.
But yeah, so my uncle Al was like I say, was a pilot, and he was part of defending the south of England, around Beachy Head, around that area, which is a famous cliff edge in the UK, sheer white cliffs. I don't know whether you've ever heard a song called "The White Will Be Over the White Cliffs of Dover,"
Oh, yeah, yeah,
which was a big war song. Gracie Fields, I think she sang it. Well, that was all about the defending that part of the world. So he was involved, shot down twice. He just broke his wrist. And the second time he was shot down over Belgium, and he fought his way back through safe houses.
wow.
I mean, yeah. But he told me a story. My dad told me a story about two planes colliding over that part of the world, and by the time the rescue teams got to him, they were just a crumpled mass. But the British pilot had dragged the German pilot out of the flames, and they just died in each other's arms. Not in that way, but
Right,
they
yeah,
just died together. They were that badly injured. So in the last moments, there was sort of camaraderie, and there's a track on that called "Enemy Mine," which I tried to do it sort of like I was very influenced by like the doom epic metal
mm,
type tracks that were going around in the early 2000s. Um, Bands like Warning. I don't know whether you're aware
yeah,
of
yeah.
Warning. massive doom metal band,
Yeah.
For me anyway. I think, it's funny how we like certain bands and you think they're huge, you think, oh, but then the reality is there's just three guys, but they all go to work every day. And
Yeah.
the funny story about uh, Rob Weir out of Tigers of Pantang and the bass player. So Rob's out touring with the Tigers of Pantang. This is around 2009, 2010. He just got the Tigers back together, maybe a couple of years before that. His version of the Tigers. And the original bass player, Dawson
Yeah.
from Saxon. So I can't remember the guy's name, but he's on a train going somewhere. The old bass player for Saxon, and coming towards him down is the trolley on the train that serves the rolls and the teas and the coffee, and it's Rob out the Tigers of Bantam,
Wow.
and he's looking at him, and they're both thinking, "Oh my God," because they know each other. But
Wow.
everybody thinks these bands are huge.
Yeah.
Rob's still working on the trains now,
Is it
you
still?
know.
Wow.
Yeah, still working on trains. I mean, they get a few quid for playing. You make a little bit of money, uh, but it's not enough to five guys to retire and pay the mortgage. They're
Yeah.
all, you're a worker as well as a rocker.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's a travesty. And so I mean, as long I mean, he's happy, I mean, and I don't, I'm not belittling that job in any way, but it's just a travesty in some ways because I mean, especially I mean, Tigers of Tang was hugely influential. I mean, just a hugely influential band, and still to this day, I think. I mean, obviously with Sykes, he just passed away. But yeah, but I think Rob Weir is criminally underrated as a songwriter and as a guitar player, for sure. Yeah, as are you, I think. And a lot of members of those different bands, I think. As a fan, I've always been a little frustrated with, the fact.
as as a
Yeah,
as a musician, I'm frustrated, but as a fan of band people that I've played with, it's really frustrating. I mean, I don't call myself a natural musician. I'm not. I have to work really hard, even to get to a pathetic level. I've got to really work hard. Um, so, I mean, I'd have loved to have been one of these guys that could just pick stuff up straight away. I'll never get any better than I am now. I'll never. I could sit down for 8 hours a day. I would never get any better. I'm at a wall now. I'll never get any better. But like these guys that are natural musicians, they just keep developing and keep getting better and better and better because their first reaction in the morning is to put a guitar around them or
yeah,
to listen to music or to watch stuff, other people doing stuff. They just want to learn. People like me, you just have to graft and graft and graft. It is quite frustrating sometimes, but it's just the way of things. And the same as my voice. I'm not a singer. I've never been a singer. I mean, I blag my way through it all. And I've got, you hear me and you know it's me. But for people that are into, like classical sounding singers like your Dios and your Bob Alfords and your Ian Gillans and I mean, I sound crap. They think I sound crap, you know, but mine is a new wave of British heavy metal voice.
yeah,
And within that genre are all types of voices, you
yeah.
know. And I put myself alongside like a guy called Dave Halliday for a band called Hell. I'm not anywhere near in his league. He was a fantastic singer songwriter and a great. But as soon as I heard him and the guy from Angel Witch,
Oh yeah,
Albul, that's my type of voice. I'm sort of was in that register. It's all a bit deep now, but it was sort of in that register.
right.
So yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating. But I mean, Rob Wheeler was an inspiration for me in 1980 when I bought Wildcat, and it was just the four of them. But Rob Wheeler's guitar playing I could sit on headphones and he double tracked every guitar. And it was the first time I thought, that's how they do it. They double track it and put it in the mix like this, you know. And I was beginning to think that I need another guitar player so we do that live, you know.
Yeah.
But I thought his guitar playing was fantastic, um, because it was melodic. It was simple.
Hmm.
There was no there was none of this. I mean, Van Halen, across the pond, Van Halen was setting the world on fire. For me, Rob Weir was setting the world on fire.
Hmm.
It was the for me. It was the new wave of British heavy metal record. Looking back, that started it for a lot of people. You
Yeah.
know, and fair play to Neat Records. I think it was Neat Records who put the first Tigers single out
Yeah, I think so.
in 1979, and then sold their contract to MCA or whatever they were signed to. I think it was MCA. And that first album, even though it was really bloody heavy, and the vocals on it weren't what you'd call classical type vocals. Can't remember his name now.
Jesse Cox, is that?
Oh, Jess Cox, of course.
Yeah, Jess Cox.
It's funny, and I'll go off in a tangent and start talking about Jess. But yeah, Jess Cox's vocals were a bit sort of, well, not what you'd expect to hear on a sort of rock metal record.
Yeah.
It was almost talking in parts.
Yeah, it
You know,
almost had like a
don't
punk vibe to it a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and again, I sort of get the impression with Jess, I mean, and that perhaps he was working really hard to get to that level
Hmm.
because he wasn't a natural singer. I heard him later in other bands. I think Lionheart he was in, or Bank of Wool, and I think he was in that bloody so-called I can't remember what they were called now. Doesn't really matter. But his vocals got more classy,
Hmm.
more sort of almost rock, 70s rock vocals in the
Yeah.
end. So he got there in the end, but persistence and carried on and graft. But of course, he didn't do it in the Tigers because they got the new guy in and brought in guy you just mentioned earlier,
Oh, John Sykes.
Sykes. Sykes was a revelation. He was a one-off, wasn't he, really,
Yeah.
Sykes?
Yeah.
Every band he ever joined, he lifted it. Every band this was, he lifted it to another level. And when he moved on, they never kept that up. It would always go down again. And I think that happened to the Tigers as well. When he left when he walked out in the Tigers, there's no disrespect to Rob and the guitarist that they got in to replace Sykes. But Sykes was a phenomenon, wasn't he? He really was.
Yeah.
He was a one-off.
Right.
And the stuff he did with Blue Murder,
Oh.
you know, his voice in the end was brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, he was a singer, a guitarist, and a great player, on a par with Randy Rhoads and people like of that level. You know,
Oh yeah. His
but
vibrato.
there was some.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah, his vibrato, and yeah, just an amazing guitar player.
It was unreal, wasn't it? And he had a strange picking technique.
Yeah.
He had a strange off the string picking technique, which was a bit odd to look at. A bit like what's his name was out of Megadeth. What was his name? The
Oh,
guitarist, the strange dude.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I was in awe of John Sykes. I went out and bought that. They did something called the audition tapes that came out on the single before the album came out. It came out on a single called the audition tapes with John Sykes and I can't remember the singer's name. But and it was the first time I heard, and they all of a sudden they were this classic five, which I wanted all the time. And again, another inspiration, you know,
Yeah.
really good. John DeVille, was it John Devil was the singer.
Oh, okay.
He came from a band called Persian Risk, where
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, came from Persian Risk, where what's his name did Adam Motorhead. He came from Persian Risk,
That's right. Okay.
the
Yeah.
guitar player. But great, they were a great band as well. They signed to Neat. They were signed to Neat. They did a couple of albums.
Yeah.
with another singer called uh, by the by, I'm going off again. So yeah, that was. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can't remember what the question was, but yeah, these guys were in. The three, Ian Smith out of Jameson Raid, who was my guitar tutor in the mid 70s.
Oh, cool.
KK Downing,
Yeah.
um, and Rob Weir. They were the three for me. You know, they got Ian Smith got me started and got me going and got me inspired. And I'd sort of been to see Jameson Raid in 1976, 77, 78 around the clubs in Birmingham, 79 when they sort of peaked around 79. And then, of course, Ian Smith left and the bass player John Ace left and they started doing different type of stuff and it was never the same,
Yeah.
never as good. So I didn't really have anything to do with them again until I literally reformed the band. I got them all back together around 2009, 10. They're all living in different parts of the world. And I said, well, come and stay with me. You can use the, because we had a rehearsal barn. I said, you can use the studio, you can use the rehearsal barn. We'll book some shows up. So they booked 3 shows up. Headbangers opened there in Germany and the Robin 2 in Bilston in Birmingham and someone, the O2 in Bilston in Birmingham. Packed those 2 out. It was an um, amazing reunion of the original members. And then they tried to do it again the year after, but John Ace didn't want to do it. He'd sort of had enough, done it now, I don't want to. So I stepped in. I did Download with them. That was the only show I did. But I'm afraid me and Terry butted heads.
Mm.
I thought if they were going to do it, let's get on it, let's write some tracks. And Ian was writing stuff with me. I've got a hard drive still full of songs me and Ian wrote
Oh,
for
wow.
Jameson Raid, the new album. But Terry wasn't into it. Terry wanted to put his songs on from his solo stuff. They were called the Flying Birds, his solo band or something. So we saw, but he didn't sound like anything like Jameson Raid. And you know the albums he's released since as Terry Dark's Jameson Raid, they just sound nothing like Jameson Raid.
Yeah, it's like a
But
solo
you
album.
know, so I left them to it, and we had a bit of a fallout, I have to say. You know, I tried to get him to just get a bit more into what Ian was trying to, you know, because Ian was a guitar player as far as I was concerned. John Ace was a songwriter, he wrote all the songs. And
Yeah.
when he left, you know, I tried to imitate John and try to get Ian involved in, because Ian was a great guitar player, you know, absolutely fantastic. You listen to the early stuff, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
you listen to Hard Lines on Metal from Youth as 2, and they changed the name to The Raid, which was a bit daft. But you listen to Hard Rise, the guitar playing on that, phenomenal. You
Oh,
know,
yeah. It's
absolutely.
great. Yeah, that early stuff is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, you know, 7 Days of Splendor. It's
Oh,
very
yeah.
hard. It's a Crime. I mean, It's a Crime. What's the It's Getting Hotter. Oh,
Oh,
what a fantastic getting hotter all the time. I mean, I'd know them all word for word, you know. I was that much of a fan. But of course, it's never the same. It's never the same. You reform these bands, you get them together. They're never quite the same. The same with Vardis. And they reformed. I got an email out of the blue around the time of MySpace,
mm.
around that sort of era. Everybody was using MySpace. From the bass player Terry Holby or somebody, I think he was. Ted, do you know where we can get hold of Steve from Vardis, the singer from Vardis? And I said, I ain't got a clue. He says, well, nobody's heard of him for years, and I'd be interested in getting Vardis back together again. I'd found him within an hour. He was working at a university. I'd found him on the internet.
Wow.
So it was me who sort of got Vardis back together as well. So
Oh,
nobody's
cool.
actually gone, oh, yeah, Paul Britton did that. But it was actually me. But yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of bands out there that gave it a go again, shall we say. But it's very, very difficult to keep the original members together. Usually, the way I've seen it is when a band from this era reforms, it's sometimes 2 or 3 members from the original band, And then a couple of them, once they've done it, seen that it's not, but never going to be as good, because it never is.
Yeah.
They give it a miss, and it's always ends up being like one band, one person carrying it on. Certainly in the case of Rob, Rob Weir, the amount of lineups he went through to try and
Oh
get the
yeah.
stable lineup he's got now, sort of thing. I'm off to see him in a week or so,
Oh,
in a
cool.
month or so. He's only literally down the road. If you walk, 5 minute walk,
Oh, really?
in a club called the Factory with a band called Titan. With
Oh yeah, Titan. Great band.
yeah, brilliant, brilliant stuff. So I get to see them both. So yeah, a lot of bands from around that time have another go. It's never quite the same, and everybody complains that nobody goes to see them, and we don't pull enough people in. We've heard it a million times. What's the point in putting gigs on with four new wave a bit every month if you're only going to pull 50 people in? That's the way it is now.
Yeah.
You know,
Fortunate.
it's we're all dying off. We're all getting too old to. I mean, every gig I go to, I have to be closest to the loo.
Yeah, I hear you there. I hear you there. Now I know speaking of gigs, I know you don't play live anymore, but
No, I tried with Scarab. We tried again last summer, and being on a stage to me is like this mecca of a place. It's like the Babylon of you, what you believe in. It's this fantastic. And if you can't do 100% to me, and we sounded appalling. None of us were on our game, and I turned up arrogant as fuck, thinking, "Oh yeah, I haven't played for 3 years. I'll just slip back in." They'd been rehearsing the other three guys, and I just turned up thinking I was going to be great. It wasn't great. It was really bad. The worst I'd ever sounded. And because my voice is, naturally got lower over the years, and just to give me a chance of getting up to some of the old stuff, we drop tuned
mm,
down to D. And Dave, the guitarist, Dave Parrish, of course, dropped tuned down to D. And he just didn't sound like Dave anymore.
mm, yeah.
His sound coming out the Marshall stat was sounding more like, some new metal band from, the from 2010. It wasn't. But so I bowed down. I went out. They're still jamming. They're not. They don't call themselves Scab or anything, of course, but they're still playing just for something to do. Um, but I don't know. I just thought we were going to play a couple of festivals, but the one festival we were going to do is something called Mia Fest. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Mia Fest, but not. I mean, to me, for me to go out there, I thought, no, we can't do that. If it sounds awful, we're gonna. It's just, you know, we'll be on the bill with 10 other new wave of British heavy metal acts because it's a new wave of British heavy metal
Oh, okay.
festival. And I thought, nah. When we did like Brofest, or Heavy Sound Festival in Belgium, for example, we competed with everybody because we were on our game. We aren't anymore.
Okay.
And why should we be? Why should, I mean, Dave's not a natural guitar player like me. We have to work hard we've only got so many guitar licks. I've used all mine, you know, a long time ago. So it's really, so we have to work hard, and I think I'm past the getting. I'm never going to be as good as I was, so I'm never going to do it again live.
Gotcha. Well, even though you're not playing live, is there so I know your solo project, the Battle of Britain, the album, Requiem of War came out in what, like 2018, I think, 2019?
Yeah, 2018.
Are you, and it's part one, are you planning on doing a part two?
There's the part two is written and pretty much completely recorded,
Excellent.
apart from a few vocals. I'd just like to say the vocals are demoed, but I mean, listening back to them, they're okay, some of them, but just needs tweaking, sorting out. But it's not about war this time, not in the traditional sense.
Hmm.
It's a story about the Earth dying. Off we all go to another planet, and hundreds of years later, the Earth's recovered. Because of course, the second the human race was gone, Earth would recover again, as we know it would.
Yeah.
And then we fight our way back through all the planets and the aliens, all the aliens, other civilizations want Earth. And that was the lyrical idea he had. A bit like extraterrestrial version of the Warriors. You
Cool.
know, you got to fight your way back, or watership down, my wife said. You got to fight your way back to what was your world anyway, you know. So that was the lyrical idea, and it's again a concept album, and very doomy, very epic-y again, like on the first Battle of Britain.
Cool.
But and I mean, I've just done the research this week actually. Uh, Releasing on vinyl's getting cheaper, you
Hmm.
know. It's getting easier to do it. It was really hard. I mean, I got offered deals, but it got to the point where what was the point? I might as well have done it myself and get the money back, which I did, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
I made a little bit of money off the first release, and with very little advertising, just begging people to buy it on Facebook, really.
Cool.
Sold the full run, apart from 50. I kept 50 back. I think I've probably got about 35 left now.
Nice.
I know you've asked for one. I'll gladly send you one.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. I want to buy one.
say it again.
Yeah, I want
Say
to
it
buy
again.
one. I want to buy a copy of that. Yeah.
I know you. I'll send it you. I've got one I can send you.
Thank you. Wow.
So yeah, I mean, there is going to be a two. When
Cool.
it is, I don't know.
Okay.
There's another Scarab. There's another Scarab sing track, Poltergeist 3, which
Oh,
is fully
cool.
recorded from start to finish. I did ask um, Tony Bray from Venom if he'd do the drums, and he said he'd do them if he could just record his drums and that. But he wasn't very well. I don't know whether you know he'd been fighting cancer for a while.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I mean, he's such a nice lad.
Yeah. I
Uh,
interviewed him a
they're
while
all having a
back.
fallout again, aren't they? This
Oh,
Mantis and
yeah.
Tony Dolan, they've had a
Yeah.
fallout.
It got pretty ugly. It's pretty ugly right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Unfortunate.
It's a funny old thing, the Venom situation. They've got um, this original lineup, which I mean, I'd kill for tickets, you know.
Oh yeah.
And they've got that legacy, haven't they, of playing to the 90,000 in Germany, I think it was in the mid 90s, which was the last gig they all did together. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of for Cronus. I think that was his going out on a high with the original lineup.
Yeah.
So for him to get it back together again, I don't know whether it'll ever happen,
Probably
but
not because
wouldn't that be amazing?
oh, that'd be
You
it.
know?
Yeah, that'd be incredible. But I think now, yeah, especially as you mentioned with Tony's health and with Jeff's health, I just, yeah, I don't see that ever happening again, unfortunately, which is too bad. And I think I always wonder. I mean, this is complete speculation. I have no insight into this at all. This is in my own head, but I always wondered if part of the charm and the audacity of Venom was partly because they just don't get along. I wonder if that's part of why they're so good is that there's this tension. Um,
There,
with
there was a chemistry that
yeah,
you only well, the stars have to be aligned, don't they?
yeah,
You know, like it very rarely happens with a complete band.
yeah,
And there's only three of them, but it happened with them. They're all three characters, and they all sort of played the part in producing that Venom show. And like I said, it happens in bands. Glenn Tipton with KK Downing, where you know what I mean.
yeah.
How did that happen? And then when the three of them write together, Alfred, Tipton, Downing. I mean, that is just. I mean, that has got for me. That's the heavy metal Lennon and McCartney, as
Oh
far
yeah,
as I'm concerned.
yeah. It's magic.
You know, I mean, I would have. I mean, they should have recorded some of those writing sessions with the three of them in a room on an acoustic, writing them tracks. I mean, what an insight to songwriting, masterclass in songwriting, you know.
Right.
So the stars have to be aligned sometimes, but I think you just said the audacity of Venom, which sums it up. Absolute. How? I mean, absolutely. How the fucking dare they get on with when everything else was going on? Everybody was trying to be perfect and tight and production. I mean, look, you've got to remember you've got Venom releasing black metal, and Pyromania came out the year after or something.
Yeah, that's right.
And Chuck, you know what I'm do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? They're both new wave of British heavy metal. You got Pyromania and black metal, but it's just just amazing. If you can imagine for 1 minute Mutt Lange producing Venom, it would just it just wouldn't work. It
No.
just it would have been, but what a laugh. No, it's
Yeah.
just fantastic. But I get absolutely the stars have to be aligned for certain bands to work, and them three. Absolutely. I saw them live. I mean,
Mm.
I saw them in 85 at Birmingham Odeon. And here's a little bit of trivia for you. Blaze Bailey crawled up the PA system and stage dived off the top of a column into the crowd.
Really? Wow.
The amount of things that happened at that show. I threw a pint. Have you ever heard of a band called Rothschild?
Uh, yeah, yeah,
Have you
yeah.
ever Rothschild? I threw a pint over a Rocky Shades. It was annoying me. So yeah, the fire brigade stopped the show halfway through because they were told they couldn't set the bombs off, and they did it anyway. It was like Vietnam. It was fantastic. And the fire brigade turned the lights on, and just all the fire brigade came down the front of the aisle. Uh, there was the band that went on before them. Exodus opened.
Oh, wow.
Then in the middle, there was a band called, who I missed most of Exodus, but there was a band in the middle called the Redbeards from Texas. The Redbeards from Texas were like a ZZ Top cover band.
Okay.
How they got put on the bill,
That's weird.
but they'd asked I mean I'm going to say it how I saw it. They'd asked a lady of a, she looked quite plain looking, school teacher-ish. I walked on stage, asked her, got her to introduce the Redbird from Texas. You've got to remember that Venom's audience were the roughest bikers, skinheads, punks. They were all in there. Not to mention all the musicians. Every musician in Birmingham just turned up to see them fuck up. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it was rammed. Birmingham Odeon rammed. All crap, you know. And she walked on at the front and she went, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Redbeards from Texas." And 1,000 people at the front just went and covered her from head to
Oh, God.
it was just madness. And they lasted 3 songs and they were booed off. And the chanting for Venom. And this is something that stays with me. I've said this to Tony Bray. It was the most iconic moment in heavy metal, in new wave of British heavy metal for me. And I've seen pretty much all of them. But they had this backdrop of a goat, you know, huge. And it was massive because they did everything big, huge. This is a tiny little band on Neat Records with no money. Nobody's putting money into them. Neat Records never gave them a penny. Everything they ever earned, they put into a show. So they were this little band, huge backdrop, smoke like you've never seen. And right at the top of Birmingham Odeon, just as the smoke cleared, was Tony Bray with his fist in the air. And I'll tell you what, your hair just stands on end, and that stayed with me. That was the greatest moment for me. And you know, you couldn't pretty much you couldn't pick a song out. It was just chaos for 10 tracks. 10 tracks of chaos, bombs, Cronus throwing cabs around, guitars getting smashed up, drum kits getting thrown around, people stage diving. It was just absolute. It was the beginning of the the noise metal, black metal. It was that transference from the new wave of British heavy metal sound around 84, 85. That was a heavy metal sound, and it started getting more punky, thrashy. Then you had the crossover bands come in, and I mean, now we're just used to it. We hear a rough vocal now, and we're used to it. You can even pick the lyrics up now, can't you?
Yeah.
Back in the day when Cronus opened his mouth, it's like watching Lemmy on Top of the Pops in 1977 doing Overkill or whenever it was. You're like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
We can't do that on Top of the Pops, you know? And the voice that was different than we'd ever heard. But now it's just Lemmy, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Then it was
So, so,
revolutionary.
so well, you know, I mean, Lemmy's a bigger legend than Motorhead would ever be.
Yeah.
Lemmy's the legend, you know. Motorhead were a great band. They're my wife's favourite band of all time.
Oh, I love Mother.
She's seen them loads of times, the original lineup. But yeah, you know. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying about Venom. One off, and the stars were aligned. Maybe if they did it again for one or two shows, they'd have to have some warm-ups to get back into it again.
Yeah.
But maybe a couple of big shows, one in Germany, one in London, maybe. But I'd like to think that Tony Bray and Mantis wouldn't do it unless it was sounding like it should sound,
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I would love it. I don't see it happening, but
I
never know.
don't. I think Mantis would do it.
Oh yeah.
Jeff would do it, and Tony Bray definitely do it. 100%. He'd definitely do it. You know, not sure Cronus is that bothered about it now, really.
Yeah.
He's got his other two guys, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know it's not the same, don't we? We know how much better it would be if it was the original lineup, but
Right.
he doesn't. He sees it as tighter, better, more technical. But that wasn't what Venom was about.
No, no, no.
Said this a million times. Tony Bray's got, for me, Nico McBrain, Neil Peart, very influential drummers, but so is Tony Bray. You don't have to be technically fantastic to be an influence, and he was a massive influence
Oh yeah.
on a lot of death metal bands, on a lot of crossover bands, even industrial type bands that have that thing that he did. He did this thing that nobody sounded like Tony Bray.
Yeah.
He was a monster behind the kit, an absolute monster, and a total showman. Total showman.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Revolutionary drummer. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't think he gets the credit. He doesn't get the credit. I mean, Venom get the credit from starting it all, but nobody sort of ever really says, Tony Bray, and and the diehard fans know, and the people that were influenced by him know, but he doesn't get the credit. I don't think he started all that monster kit. I mean, Christ Almighty, his kit when I saw him play live was just absolutely absurd. He'd have to get up and walk 3 paces to hit sometimes. It was just fucking madness. And you just got to think, that word audacity. You just got to think that how has he got the audacity to do it? But that was the stars being a lot. That was them 3. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic.
Very cool stuff. So I'm going to circle back a little bit. So the new album, the new Battle of Britton album, I think you said you don't have a release date yet. You don't have a,
No, I mean, it's all ready to go. It
Okay.
needs tweaking. I mean, although I've been back here back in the UK since last May, I haven't had time to set the studio up. I mean, it's here all in front of me. It's all set up, ready to go, but I just need to start plugging things in. I bought a couple of new pieces of gear, some real expensive old valve gear that I've wanted for a long time. I had a studio set up in New Zealand, but getting people to work with in New Zealand was impossible. Nobody's into my type of music, so I pretty much gave up, and tried to find other things to do. It's a very, very hard place for me to be in the end, New Zealand. I don't want to use the word let's just say it wasn't a fit for me. I had great 3 years was great, but what another year and a half was a bit too much for me. So we should have come back after 3 years. But you know, it's all good. I'm not moaning. I mean, who gets to do that? People in my situation. Just a I'm just a bloody knobhead from the back streets of Birmingham, me, and get to go and explore New Zealand for 4 years. It was just an amazing experience.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I've been all over the world. I mean, and because of my wife, because of my wife's job as well. You know, we've been able to travel the world. You know,
Nice.
it's been great. So it's been a privilege, you know, and New Zealand was a privilege for me, to be honest with you, being there. But I'm glad to be back now. My wife's retired now. We're both fully retired.
Oh, cool.
So we're just doing the house up, and then we might sell it. We might not keep it for a year or something. Don't know what we're going to do yet. But yeah. So once I've got the studio set up and running, which is I'll do next month,
Okay.
because I'll have finished the house then. I'll start work on the second album. There's a couple of other little things I want to finish off. And somebody's asked me about, I've been asked a couple of times about how to play certain riffs on that Battle of Britton album. So I was going to do a series of YouTube videos just to show how to,
Oh,
you
cool.
know, just short things to, because some of them are quite, not hard to play. Once you know how to play them, it's easy. But some are really hard to pick out
Mm.
because there's chords in there that I've made up, and the way I bounce off the strings, you know, I've sort of got my own style, I suppose.
Oh, cool.
But again, I've had to invent my own style because, like I said, I'm not that good a guitar player, and certainly not as good as I used to be. But you know,
Well,
we
that'd be
all do what
interesting.
we do, you know.
Do
And I've
you
got
have
that
a?
Scarab single to finish off as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. That'll be really exciting. Yeah, the third Poltergeist song. Very cool.
Yeah,
I'm
so I mean,
curious.
it's got programmed drums on at the moment, but if I can get somebody to do the drums, I mean, it sounds pretty good, I have to say. It sounds pretty good with programmed drums. But yeah, I mean, maybe that'll be the first thing I put out. I'll send you a video actually. Did you see the video that I put out as the biker song, as it were,
Yeah, yeah. That's
Elysium?
great. That is a great song.
Yeah,
I was gonna
well,
ask you about that. I forgot about that. Yeah, that is
I just
fantastic.
sort of had a bit of inspiration one week, and I've lost a couple of friends to motorbike accidents, and it was just a sort of paying homage to them, really. And the guy who did the video for us was the same guy who did one of the Priest off the last album videos.
Oh, nice.
I can't remember his name. But he did a really good job in making it look like once you're a biker, you're born a biker, and as you get older, you stay a biker until you die a biker, and then you
Yeah,
go to Elysium. That was the whole point of the song, you know.
yeah. Very cool.
And then you continue to be a biker in Elysium. You know, that was the whole idea. Uh, but I didn't know what was going to do with it, really. I mean, I did think about putting it out as a Scarab track, but it really wasn't. It was just me, so. I just put it out under my name. And again, I've got about 10 or 11 tracks around sort of that style,
Oh,
which is
cool.
like metal, but rocky metal, and
Yeah,
not so, heavy and detuned and stuff, or not so epic.
yeah.
And I thought, oh, maybe I'll just do a whole album of that. And I started to do it. And again, they're all written. I mean, I've got hard drives full of stuff, you know what I mean? That never sees light of day and probably never will,
Wow.
because it's really difficult on your own, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Hopefully it'll
You know,
get out there. That would be great. I would love to.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, it'd be nice if I could find somebody down here that was into my genre. And I've had a couple of offers from people down here, but unless it's exactly what I want to do,
Hmm.
it's pointless me doing it. If I'm honest, it just take up my time from doing what I want to do, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not into the cover thing.
Yeah.
I did it for 12 months with a band called Celtic Pride in 2005 when I was in Wales. When I went to university, I played in a cover band, metal cover band. And if you look them up, Celtic Pride, they're called. You look them up. They released an album about 9 years ago. Brilliant stuff.
Hmm.
Carl Sentence, if you've heard of Carl Sentence, sung
Yeah.
for Persian Risk at one point. He now sings for Nazareth. He
Okay.
was their singer. He was their singer at one point,
Well, okay.
and the drummer that used to play with Adrian Smith in ASAP when he was did a he was in them. I was the bass player,
Oh,
but only lasted a year. It's just soul destroying, you know.
just covers.
One minute you're playing a Megadeth track, the next minute you're playing Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones. I couldn't do it. And like I said, I'm not that good. I mean, when you got to learn 30 songs, God, it was just too hard work for me.
Yeah.
And that's how they earned their living. And I didn't need to earn a living at the time. So it was just getting, you know. But so I've done the cover thing for 12 months to the day. But they were a great band. But covers, you know.
Not your cup of tea. Well, well, Paul, this has been fantastic chatting with you. For everybody watching, keep an eye out for the second album, the Battle of Britain. Hopefully, maybe this year, maybe next year. We'll see. That's very exciting though to hear. And if you look in the description below, I've got links you can check out. If you haven't done so already, definitely check out Scarab, one of my favorite bands of that era. Also, as I mentioned, check out Battle of Britain and also Trappazat, which is and the Scarab album and the Trappazat are both available Bandcamp, but also I think they're still available on High Roller Records. Yeah, pick these up.
Well,
Good
I've just
stuff.
signed again with High Roller and done another run
Oh, great.
of Scarab.
Perfect.
Not Trappazat. Shan't do a Trappazat one. That was it.
Okay.
But I've done yet another run of the Scarab CDs.
Oh,
I don't
great.
want to do another. I don't want to do another vinyl run. We'll just keep it to that one. I don't know how many they did. 750. I don't know, 1,000.
Okay, cool.
But they've gone. But the Trappazat CD, I've still got copies, and I've still got copies of the Battle of Britain
Great.
album if anybody wants one.
Perfect. Very cool.
I did have an outlet for it in America, but I think I don't know. I'm not. He did sell a few. I sent him a load over at one point. I can't remember. I think he was in a band called Glacier.
Hmm.
Ever heard of them?
No.
It doesn't matter. But yeah, he sold a few over there. But yeah, most of them are sold by getting people to buy them off Facebook directly. Go on, do you want one of these? Blah, blah. And I did 450 of the bloody things. It was just fantastic,
Nice. That's great.
which really paid for all the pressing, the recording, and put a little bit in a bank to buy some upgraded gear, which I've got.
Nice.
I've got some quite expensive valve gear now, which I haven't had before.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, but great fun,
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul. This has been great chatting with
No,
you.
no, thank you. It's a privilege. I think for the purpose of the audience out there, I'll admit we did this before. This is the second time we've done it, and I was exhausted the last time I did it. I drunk too much, and I sort of went off on a few tangents, and I sort of listening back to it. I think you couldn't get your questions in sometimes. So we did it again, and for that I must thank you. And if you send me your address, I'll send you this on me. I'll send
Oh,
you this Battle of Britain
oh, thank you
vinyl.
so much. Yeah, I would love to get a copy of that. I mean,
Yeah, I'll
I've
send it
heard
you.
it.
It's not a problem. I
Great.
might have a red vinyl one somewhere as well. I'll just have a look.
Okay, cool.
But I've definitely got a black one that's not been opened.
Nice. Very
But
cool.
yeah, but thank you very much, Vic. It's been great. I mean, it's an honor that you want to even talk to me. I mean, who am I, It's, it's,
The honor is
but it's
mine.
great.
Yeah, the honor is all mine.
You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
I
great that
appreciate
there's still people out there that are interested in the genre. The great thing about the new wave of British heavy metal is, and I've said this 1,000 times, people go and see all the bands from that genre, not just one or two bands. They'll go to the festivals with new wave of British heavy metal bands on. It might be that they don't know any of the songs from certain bands that they've going to see, but because they're part of the new wave of British heavy metal, they still go and see them.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, and the audiences were always going to get smaller because we're getting older, we're getting less, going out less, you know. It's, I mean, for me to go out to a gig, it's got to be, you know, got this big hoo-ha about the Sabbath gig over here in
Oh yeah.
I haven't. I mean, oh, I mean, come on. I mean, I haven't even bothered applying for tickets. They've all gone now, but some of them were £2,500 each. You know, it's like $3,000
That's
for a ticket.
insane.
No, so and again, I couldn't guarantee I'd get a seat near the toilets.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've stopped. We've stopped going to big gigs. We like little gigs.
Yeah,
We
I'm the
love
same.
live music, but
Yeah.
don't get to do it as much as we want to do really because we're so
Yeah.
busy renovating, but we will.
Yeah,
But again, Vic, thank you so much.
thank you. This has been
No,
brilliant.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a privilege.